Today I'm meeting with Cathe Madison, and she is a licensed clinical social worker in the Salt Lake City area. So Cathe, if you could give everybody your contact information if someone wanted to speak with you after they watch this video. We're going to talk about a topic that it's becoming more and more popular in Utah, and it's something that I don't know much about, and so this is going to be good for us to have this video because I'll be able to learn some things too. So go ahead, Cathe, and just give me your contact information, and let's talk a little bit about reunification therapy and why it's so important in some of these situations in divorce.
Okay. I'm also known by Sunrise Counseling and Consulting Services, and that contact number is 801-699-5350. And then you can reach me at my office at 801-281-4084, and it's extension 18. And I am located in Taylorsville, off of I-215 and Redwood Road. And today I'm going to be talking a little bit about reunification.
So we talked a little bit beforehand. We didn't script any of this because we like to just have a kind of a natural feel to people having a conversation. We don't want it to ever feel scripted, but we did talk a little bit beforehand about kind of what reunification therapy is, why it's necessary, and we wanted to expound a little bit on that. Obviously, if there's a situation where one parent hasn't been really in the picture, whether it was because of the parent's own actions or desires to not be involved, or whether it was because they weren't allowed to be involved at that time for whatever reason, reunification therapy is, from my understanding, and hopefully Cathe can expound, is that you don't want the child to have this abrupt change of circumstances, and so you want to kind of ease into it to make things as smooth as possible. Is that correct?
That is correct. These cases surround parents, either fathers or mothers, and sometimes extended family members who have not seen a child or their children for a bit of time. And most of the cases that I get, in fact all of them that I get, are court ordered. Families have gone to the court and have requested that they do some sort of reunification therapy, and the courts have decided that it will be done therapeutically through a therapist. I've done this for at least 10 years, and it is a process where a father or mother comes in and they explain the situation to me. I refer to them as the non-residential parent. This is because the child has not visited with them nor lived with them for an extended period of time. Occasionally it will be that they come, but it's very rarely that this parent sees this child. I establish some sort of rapport with that non-residential parent. I also interview the residential parent, and I do those two interviews prior to even seeing the child or children. I want to find out as much background information as I can so that I will have a global view of what the case involves. To start out, I request that I have a court order with naming me as a reunification therapist. And most therapists will do that now, and the court recognizes that this is a specialty. After that, I will begin seeing the parties. Eventually, I will see the children. Now, could be where the parent and the child start visits right away. Sometimes that's not the case. A lot of times that's not the case because the child hasn't seen this parent for a while. So I do some work with the child to prepare them. I also do work with the non-residential parent to help them understand what it is that they need to do and what they need to focus on before seeing the child and while they're seeing the child. And then we begin therapy visits in my office.
So when you said the way you differentiate between the parents, I like that it's residential, non-residential, because you're just stating residential is the parent that's been with the child already. Non-residential, not that it's bad or has a negative connotation, is just the person that hasn't been there. So it's a lot better than I've always kind of not really had a major issue, but I don't really like custodial, non-custodial. because it's kind of like, well, you're both parents, you're both important to the child. Why the separation there makes it sound like one person does something and the other person's kind of a slacker. So I don't really like that term, and I'm sure a lot of people feel the same way. But one of the things that Utah has done that I appreciate and I think is great, they used to refer to parent time as visitation. And that really just irked a lot of people because, you know, I'm not a visitor. You're thinking just because I had a divorce, I'm not a visitor. I'm not some alien from outer space trying to visit my child. I'm the other parent. So they call it parent time. And thank you so much for that. That's a great thing for any parent that's gone through a divorce. So, you know, residential, non-residential, that doesn't sound like you're trying to label anybody. It just sounds like you're just trying to be descriptive and say, this person's been around, this person hasn't been around. No judgment there, but here's how we're going to go forward. And so one of the things that I'd wondered, that I talked to you about earlier, is I'd asked, you know, do you ever see people where they come to you and ask for you to be involved, or is it always court ordered? And you said almost every time it's court ordered. Have you ever had any?
I don't do any cases that are not court ordered.
And that's by your choice then?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it is by my choice. I have occasionally gotten cases where people have called me and asked me to do, they've heard of my name somewhere and they've asked me if I do this, and if I do, will I do it? And I always quiz them and find out if this is a court order. What I find is that you have a little more leverage when you have a court order, and both parents seem to be more invested in the process if this is the case. And so
you seem more committed because it's
exactly,
it's a requirement and not, well, this is something we can just stop doing if we don't like it. Okay.
Exactly. Not every case is successful. I don't want to give any false impression. There are a lot of factors involved in reunification, some of which I cannot control as a reunification therapist. When you're looking for someone to do reunification, it's probably a really good idea if you find out if they've had training in reunification. I myself have trained through AFCC. That's a actually global organization that deals with family courts, judges, therapists, mediators, and attorneys, that their focus is on trying to do what is in the best interest of the child. And reunification is a new area that has been developed within the last 10 to 20 years, because the courts have noticed that there are parents who have lengthy periods of time without seeing the kids for one reason or another, whether it's estrangement, which means something has happened between that parent and that child, or if it's alienation, which means one parent or someone else has influenced the child not to see that parent, whatever the case.
Do you ever have situations where it's not really a situation where the divorce created a huge wedge between the parents, but it's more, let's say I worked on like an oil rig and I'm not around for 6 months at a time, and maybe I'm only back for a couple of weeks, and during the divorce we didn't want to be around each other when I was off, and so just by the nature of my job it ended up putting us 2 years or a year away from seeing the kids, and so now that's why the reunification therapy is important, and the court has deemed that it needs to happen. So I imagine situations like that do occur sometimes.
They do occur sometimes.
Or like, you're in the services, or a job where you're gone for long periods of time.
That is true, but most all of the cases that I get, that is not the case. And generally, if a parent is away, that there's no estrangement or alienation, that's because they've moved away for a certain reason. And when they come back, there might not be conflict in allowing the child to see that parent again. Most all of the cases that I receive are very high conflict, and that is part of the divorce separation process. Sometimes these kids have not seen their parents for a really long time.
So maybe sometimes kids don't want to see the other parent, or I can imagine there'd be all kinds of different issues that would come up. Being a parent that I wear a lot of hats. I'm a step parent. I have stepchildren. I don't like to refer to them as stepchildren because steps are for walking on, not for family member description. So but I think in situations that you must deal with, certainly I'm sure there's a lot of tension on both sides.
Mhm.
I'm sure there's, resentment and all kinds of things going on, and maybe even for the kids. Because when you say kids, I know that's that's kind of a general term when you're talking about court, because sometimes these are teenagers that are a couple of months from being 18,
Mhm.
but until they hit that crossover, kid, they're children. And maybe that's the way it should or shouldn't be. That's a totally different topic for another day. But certainly you're going to have situations like that where no matter how much mom wants, say, Susie or Billy to see dad, if dad's the one that's been gone, or the other way around, dad's had the kids forever because mom left for whatever reason, and the kids just aren't real interested in having that relationship. But the court has said, they're back, they're allowed this time, they want to enforce this time, it's got to happen, we all got to get along, kind of thing. So I imagine that'd be tough on a lot of levels, because how do you tell a kid that's not really a kid anymore,
Yeah.
driving, has a job, goes and does whatever they want, really within reasonable boundaries of the law or whatever, and how you say, Susie, sorry, so sad, so bad, you're gonna see mom or you're gonna see dad, whether you like it or not, until you're 18. And then you can decide.
That's the optimal.
Yeah.
When I do any kind of reunification, I really like the support of the residential parent, if I can at all get it, and hopefully in a perfect world that happens. Generally, there is some resistance, but not always, and I try and work with the non-residential parent to figure out, in some cases, what has happened, how did this happen, what part do you play in this, what part does the child play in this, and try and make some suggestions regarding behaviors and how to reunite. This is not family therapy. This is a specific kind of therapy that focuses only on the reunification process between two people or several people, depending on how many children there are, and how well that could go depends on everybody's cooperation. Unfortunately, it doesn't always work. I cannot tell you that I have a 100% success rate, because there are factors that I cannot control. But I think it's worth the process, because I think children need to be involved with their parents, and I think parents need to be involved with their children to some degree, depending. We always do visits in the office at first. Eventually we can transition to doing visits outside of the office. We can do activities. I've done that many times. And eventually, based on the case itself, and it goes case by case, I will move to have the parent and the child or children have activities outside of my site. But then we always come back and process how that went. I've had some good successes with parents and children who have reunited, who have gone back to having a very good relationship with their parents. I've had instances where children have contact with the parent. It's not as much as sometimes the parent wants them to have, but at times, at that particular moment in time, it's a good fit and it works, and if they keep working towards it. When I take a case, I take it until the child or children are 18.
Oh, that's good to know. So you're on long term.
Right.
And so can they come visit you once a month, or how does that work?
Usually, to begin with, I'll see the child for as long as I need to prepare them for visiting with the parent. I will also see the parent if need be, to try and give them instructions on what I think would be helpful in the visit with the child or children. It depends on the schedules. I like to see everybody maybe once a week to begin with, and then we can spread it out as it goes on. And then when visits go without me being there, that can be as many times during the week as everybody is okay with.
So there's guardian ad litems, and they're more the attorney that speaks for the child.
Right.
So it's not, if I'm understanding the role correctly, are you there to, let's say you have a situation where you just know and feel based on everything that you've seen that this reunification shouldn't happen.
Mm-hmm.
These people are in danger or worse off, or they cannot get around, they can't get along, they should not reunify. Things are better without it. I mean,
Yes.
do you have situations where you have to then recommend to the court, I don't think this reunification should continue. I think they're happy where they are. This is causing them a lot of stress.
Unfortunately, yes, that does happen sometimes, where I perceive that the reunification is going to damage any future relationship between the parent and child, and it may not be a good idea to continue on at that time. We may have to take a break and come back at another time in the future sometime. That's why I say I stay on until the child is 18, if we have to do something like that. There are some instances where parents do have enough issues that I worry about the child, not necessarily just physically, but emotionally and psychologically, if they're in this parent's care for a long period of time. I do work with the parent as much as I can to see that's ameliorated, but in cases where I see where it's not going to work, I will report that to the court. And so I do report periodically to the court, because reunification is an open court order. It's continuing on.
You're mandated to do that, right? Basically,
Right.
You have an obligation. So,
Yeah.
okay, so it's not like you're tattling on the parents, but you have to report and say, it's going well, or, there's this issue, but I think we're getting around that.
Mm-hmm.
This still continues.
Mm-hmm.
I've explained this and this.
Mm-hmm.
So, if I'm understanding it correctly, and it sounds pretty straightforward, but I mean, you're there to kind of, to help the parties reunify,
Mm-hmm.
if they can reunify, and if they can't, then you're gonna have to either, give your recommendations to the court, much like a GAO would do.
Mm-hmm.
Guardian ad litem would say, I recommend this, this, and this
Mm-hmm.
on behalf of the child.
Mm-hmm.
But it's not quite that technical. It's more of you are there in a space to help,
Mm-hmm.
to be the therapist, to, be the counselor, to be the guide, to kind of help people understand, okay, well, when you say such and such to Susie, it makes her feel this way.
Mm-hmm.
And, where she's already got a car and a license and is 17, she doesn't feel like she's ready to accept, stuff like that. You would kind of be the liaison or the interim between. And so you can speak kind of on behalf of the children sometimes to the other parents, or on behalf of the other parent to the other parent.
Correct.
You can kind of be the person to be the buffer zone, and also to say, okay, that's not healthy. I don't recommend you doing that anymore.
Yeah.
Or,
I do have a very open style where I am honest with parents and point out things that I think are negative or that cause situations to be worsened with their child. I try and give them as good a parental advice as I can. My objective is always what's in the best interest of the child, and if I really see objectively that what is in the best interest of the child at this point is not to reunify with that parent, I will be honest with them. And I can say that there have been times when children refused to come, or they didn't want to continue. And there have also been times when the non-residential parent said, I don't want to do this anymore. And for a multitude of reasons on both the child or the parent's part.
Could be that it was too painful for them, or they weren't being received well or respected well. I mean, I can see so many different angles and dynamics, and I'm sure you've seen just about every situation you could perceivably imagine. How long have you been doing this?
I've been doing reunification for probably over 10 years.
Yeah, so I'm sure you've seen a lot of situations where, and maybe you fully agreed with somebody just saying, it's not helping me, it's not helping the children. I feel worse, it's awkward. They're already a full-blown adult. They can come over whenever they want as soon as they hit 18, which is right around the corner. I'm sure you've seen situations like that where you're like, look, I think that, mom or dad or whoever the person, the non-residential parent is right to say they don't really need me right now. And they will come to me when they want to, and they know my door's open.
Yeah.
So I'm sure you've seen that stuff happen.
I have seen that happen. I try and be as honest and straightforward with parents as I can, and one of the things that I do, if I see that I'm not a good fit for doing reunification, I will explain to the parent and child that I think it's probably good that I discontinue the service, and they may find someone else that is able to help them based on chemistry or an approach. I do approach situations based on what AFCC standards are, and that is to make sure that I'm covering all my bases. I like the fact that they have a guideline and a model, and I use that, but in some cases I have to let cases go too, and that's okay, because I am doing this for what's in the best interest of the kids.
Right. And you're not just saying that so that you can make an order go through or something like that.
Oh, no.
That's really your job is,
Yes.
I am here for the best interest of the children.
Yes.
And to make sure that it works for everybody. But
'Cause-
first and foremost, best interest of the children.
True, because this is such high conflict work that if it were just that, I probably wouldn't do it, and a lot of people
Right.
wouldn't. But I look for what's healthy and helpful to the kids, because I think that that's important. We have to be there for the kids.
So what does, if somebody needed reunification therapy, let's say somebody just looked up, that exact topic, they found this video, what is kind of the going rate? Hopefully that's not a bad question for me to ask, the going rate, or what you charge versus the going rate, or if it's right about the same. I have no idea what it would cost hourly, because I've never really had anything to do with reunification therapy personally.
Exactly. So. I don't know what other people charge, to be honest with you, because that's not something as a professional that we discuss, but I can tell you that I usually take a retainer up front of $1,500, and then I work and bill that retainer. I do charge $100 an hour, and that is each clinical hour. I don't necessarily charge for setting appointments, but if I'm answering long emails, or if I'm on the phone with attorneys, or if I'm writing letters, or if I'm going to court, or something like that.
And that's when you turn on the meter like a taxi, a taxi driver. Okay, well, I think this has been useful. I mean, I know I've learned quite a few things, and I hope that that's what happens when people watch the video. And I'm really appreciative that you came over here and could meet with me today and talk about reunification therapy. But if you could be so kind as to go ahead and share your contact information again, and I'm really glad you came out.
Okay, I'm Cathe Madison, LCSW. Also, Sunrise Counseling and Consulting Services, and my numbers are 801-699-5350 and 801-281-4084, extension 18, and I am located in Taylorsville, Utah.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.